The Hylians are the main species seen in the world of The Legend of Zelda. They're seen literally everywhere, and together with the Zoras, Gorons, and Kokiri, they live together in peace. However, there is one forest-dwelling race that has turned against them before, the DEKUS. In some games they are friendly, and in others they are foes. So what would happen in a full-out war between the Hylians and the DEKUS? Well, let's find out. In one corner, we have the Hylians, who originally came from the floating island Skyloft and later on settled on the ground. They eventually formed the Kingdom of Hyrule, and their capital city, Hyrule Castle Town, was born. From here, they ruled their country and built their towns, created weapons like spears, swords, shields, and bows, and mastered the magic of music and other abilities like sending each other telepathic messages. They have their own army led by Princess Zelda or the King of Hyrule, and mostly reside in their own villages where they create all kinds of items and breed cattle. In the other corner, we have the DEKUS. No, not the anime type. Hey, My Hero Academia, what are you doing here? Get out! Go! Go! This is a Zelda video, what are you doing here? Now back to the Zelda DEKUS. There are multiple types of them, like the Babas, Scrubs, and Totems. They mostly live in the forests and swamps of the various worlds seen in the series, with the Deku flowers being their favorite spot. In some games like Four Swords and Majora's Mask, they are seen working together, expanding the Lost Woods, or maintaining a kingdom. Besides that, there are also a ton of Deku scrubs that travel the world to sell their special forest products. Now there's also a less humanoid side of the race. These are the Deku Babas, which are essentially aggressive flesh-eating plants. So now that we have an idea of who the two sides are, we can start to compare them. Who would win a war? The united Deku forces, or the warriors from the Hyrulean kingdom? To find out which one would win, we will look at the following one by one. Their abilities and weaknesses, base, weapons and armor, and leader. First up, we're going to have a look at the Hylians. It is shown that they have an extended lifespan to the point of living for centuries, and their heritage also gives them unique psychic and magical abilities. It seems that aside from these abilities like telepathic messages, the Hylians also possess a degree of superhuman strength. Another special ability of the Hylians is their use of magic and musical notes that can aid them in multiple ways, like fast-forwarding time, summoning instant storms, and teleportation to specific locations throughout the world. Overall, they don't have any weaknesses and are just as capable as a human, but with some added bonuses here and there. Now for the DEKUS. These little critters have a lot more special abilities, and some are extremely useful. All of them can hide under the ground and pop out whenever they want. So when it comes to surprise effects, they are amazing. Another thing they can do, well, the Deku Scrubs at least, is launch themselves into the air using a Deku flower and fly around for a short time, dropping Deku nuts to blind enemies. They can also shoot these nuts while sitting in their flower. This way they can attack from a distance and hide once you try to attack. And as a way to defend themselves, they can also pull out some sort of rounded wooden shield. The final special ability we see is actually the Deku Totem's body. Their red segmented pieces are completely invulnerable to any attack, leaving only their heads vulnerable. To defeat them in the game, Link must form a totem to reach their height and shoot them with a bow or slash them with a sword. Now clearly they have a ton of handy abilities, however they have two huge weaknesses: fire and water. They're mostly made out of wood, so adding fire to the mix will burn them to a crisp. And besides that, they can't really cross water, all they can do is hop on it for a bit, but after a while, they will drown. Now, which one is more powerful here? The DEKUS or the Hylians? Well, despite the weaknesses, I would say it's a tie. The DEKUS might have their disadvantages, but their abilities are ridiculously good. They could use their flowers to perform multiple types of surprise attacks. For example, all of them popping out at once, bombarding troops out of nowhere, or even flying over to stun them all and then take them out while they're completely disorientated. Another thing they could do is combine the Deku Totems and Babas to create a deadly trap. All they need to do is trap the enemy soldiers using the Totems as walls, and then let the Babas eat them all. What it comes down to is that these creatures are great for guerrilla warfare. The main strategy with this tends to involve the use of a small, attacking mobile force against a large, unwieldy force. They would mostly use their special troops to launch small attacks, ruin the enemy's plans, and ambush them. Sure, the Hylians also have some great powers, but they're not as handy as the ones the Dekus have. So when it comes down to it, it's a draw. Now for their base. First up, the Hylians. They mostly live in towns like Kakariko Village, and their main base being Hyrule Castle. This is a huge walled-off town with a drawbridge. When you enter it, you first get to the town section and later on the castle itself. This is the layout in most Zelda titles. It's an extremely good base and hard to get into, especially for the Dekus, because water is one of their weaknesses. Besides that, the walls surrounding the castle are great for archers, especially when the enemy tries to storm into the castle. In order to get inside, you would need some serious firepower, because the walls are thick and entirely made out of brick, and the doors are made of massive wooden boards, or even out of reach because of the water. The only thing being able to break through this wall with force would be something like a cannon or another type of artillery piece like a catapult. Now the Dekus have multiple different bases, but the best one would probably be either the Deku Palace or the Lost Woods. Both of these bases have their own advantages. The palace has thick wooden walls and is surrounded by water and is hidden in a swamp. This would present various problems for the Hylian troops, one of them being weight. In a swamp, heavy armor will slow you down, and you could even drown because of it. Other problems would be navigating through it, dealing with the monsters found there, any traps that were set on the paths, and enemies that could be lurking in the dark. We've seen in multiple conflicts in the real world that this could be their end. Just look at the war in Vietnam, where the Americans ran into a lot of problems because of the rainforest and the tactics used by the enemy. Another good example is the French invasion of Russia in the 1800s. Here, Napoleon had a lot of trouble with the extreme conditions as well, with a lot of his soldiers being taken out by cold or disease. Even if they would have their main base somewhere in the Lost Woods, then they would still run into the same problems. There would even be more trouble because people tend to get lost in those woods, and it's even said that they will transform into a Deku Scrub or a Stalfos. So the more soldiers get lost, the bigger the enemy's army gets. Yet another advantage for the Dekus. In Four Swords Adventures, they even try to expand the Lost Woods to cover all the forests of Hyrule, and even have underground passageways, which they use to travel outside of the forest. Now here Dekus win, and that's because of one clear reason. Their base has a lot more dangers, and it can't really be invaded. The Hylians would essentially be fighting against the forest or swamp itself, and in a worst case scenario, an ever-expanding one. So dealing with all of that already takes up a lot of their resources, energy and time, making it a lot easier for the Dekus. Besides that, if their leader isn't cautious enough and rushes in, it will cost them a lot of troops and supplies. Now, if you look at the Hylians base, then you can already get an idea of what you're up against and what the goal is. Besides that, the Dekus can counter a lot of their defenses like the wall and the moat. They will use their Deku flowers and fly over it while bombarding everyone. While they don't have a way of getting rid of these defenses, they can still avoid or bypass them. Now for their weapons and armor. First up, the Hylians. They have a ton of different weapons and also actual armor to use. They have short melee weapons like a sword and shield, long range ones like spears and claymores, and even ranged weapons are on the menu. Their soldier armor is made out of thick metal and covers the wearer from top to bottom. Well, all of this is the case in Breath of the Wild at least. In other games like Twilight Princess and Ocarina of Time, they are mostly seen in chainmail and steel plating here and there, carrying a spear or sword and big tower shield. Bows aren't seen a ton, but we know that they have them. However, by the looks of it, they aren't used a whole lot. Now the Dekus don't really have any weapons, since they mostly use their natural abilities to attack, so spitting nuts and dropping flash nuts, and the Deku Baba's sharp teeth. So they are quite limited when it comes to their attacks, and the Hylians win with a landslide here, as you could expect. The Deku Scrubs have a clear weakness, which is being shot from a distance or deflecting their nuts back to get them out of the flower. Sure, the Dekus could change their tactics that they hide in their flower after each shot, and if they're outside of it, they will shoot while running. Besides that, in some games like Ocarina of Time, we have seen huge versions of them that certainly could do some damage. This would make it a lot harder, but still the Hyrulean soldiers are really strong and even wear armor. So when it comes down to a 1-to-1 fight, the Hyruleans win. However, the Deku Babas and Bio Deku Babas would certainly be a challenge for them. These can be quite aggressive and can even walk around with quite a lot of speed as seen in Majora's Mask. And other Deku types like the Totem version can also become a huge challenge for the Hylians. However, they all have one weakness: fire. So the Hylians would certainly have an advantage here. Now for the final aspect, their leader. First, let's look at the Hylians. Here, it's Princess Zelda or the King of Hyrule. Both of them have experience with warfare and are great leaders, which you can clearly see. The Hylians are the dominant species in the world after all. Now for the Dekus. Here, their leader would most likely be a king similar to the one seen in Majora's Mask. He's described as being rash, overreactive, and overprotective. He's also quite cruel because he even tortures his enemies. Not the best traits for a leader. It's good that he has some fire within him, but he also needs to be rational and calm in order to make good decisions. Now for this reason, I would say the Hylians win. Their leaders are extremely wise and have made sure that they are the leading group in the entire world for centuries. So, now that we looked at it all, who would win this war? Well, I would say the Hylians because of their strong army and great leader. They could probably push the Deku forces back into the forest, but from that point onwards, it would be stupid for them to go deeper. They would never be able to fully defeat them, but they can certainly prevent the Deku forces from taking over the castle. Depending on the situation, they might have a tough time with the ever-expanding forest and could even lose settlements like Kakariko Village. But a fortress like Hyrule Castle will probably never fall. It would be an interesting fight for sure. And who knows, maybe we will see it in the future. Thank you for watching this video, you lovely human. Be sure to click the subscribe button and the little bell so you stay up to date. You can also watch more videos. I hope you have a great day. I hope your weekend was cool.